After a series of inexplicable medical misdiagnoses, my distant cousin arrived to act as my medical proxy, suggesting I update my will to name her as the sole guardian of my special needs son. I realized she was subtly tampering with my medication. I agreed to the guardianship, then collapsed from a sudden illness, confining myself to bed and communicating only through written notes. What she didn't see was the nanny camera disguised as a ceramic bird installed directly over the medicine cabinet, recording her nightly visits. My life revolves around Leo, my 9-year-old son with severe nonverbal autism. His care is complex, demanding precision and vigilance. After my husband passed away last year, my already intricate schedule became a tightrope walk. Then came the misdiagnoses. It started subtly sudden bouts of dizziness, inexplicable fatigue, and a persistent dull headache that no doctor could pinpoint. My long-term doctor suggested stress, but I knew my body, and this felt manufactured. It felt like something was being introduced into my system. I suspected Clara. Clara is my distant cousin, a registered nurse who relocated to Seattle after my husband's death, claiming she wanted to support family. She projected an aura of competence and concern, but her eyes held a calculating coldness. Since her arrival, she had taken over coordinating my medication schedule, citing my obvious stress as a reason to relieve me of the burden. The proposal. One afternoon, while I lay on the sofa, feeling the familiar fog descend, Clara sat beside me, clutching a freshly printed document. "Eleanor," she said softly, but with a practiced professional edge, "your recent medical episodes are worrying, and Leo, his future needs to be secure." She gently pushed the paper toward me. It was a draft of a new will focused entirely on guardianship. "Given your unpredictable health, the court might deem your current plan unstable. I've drafted this. It names me as the sole temporary guardian for Leo should your condition worsen. I'm a medical professional, and I'm family. It's the safest thing for him." The proposal was breathtakingly audacious. She wasn't just suggesting guardianship. She was positioning herself to seize full control of Leo's significant trust fund, which was tied to his long-term care needs. The trust fund was the real target. The pressure to agree was immense. She had been systematically weakening me, and now she was moving in for the kill. The decision. I realized I couldn't fight her with logic or law yet. She had the medical access, the professional facade, and the forged narrative of my failing health. If I pushed back, she would simply increase the tampering and get me declared permanently incapacitated. I had to play her game. I had to create a crisis she could exploit, but on my terms. I pushed myself up, feigning reluctant resignation. "You're right, Clara. I'm too tired to fight this. I agree to the guardianship. It needs to be secured." Clara's eyes flashed with a hint of triumphant excitement she quickly suppressed. "Thank you, Eleanor. You're making the right choice." The fake collapse. That evening, I executed the next phase of my plan. I dramatically collapsed near the stairs, letting out a convincing cry of pain. "My head, I can't move. I think I've had a sudden relapse." I gasped, clutching my head and ensuring I appeared completely helpless. Clara rushed over, falling perfectly into my trap. She called a doctorone who had only recently seen me and was unfamiliar with my baseline health, and relayed an exaggerated version of my critical symptoms. The doctor agreed to manage me at home, recommending immediate bed rest and complete communication restriction. "Don't worry, Eleanor," Clara said, tucking me into bed, her voice a poisonous blend of concern and smug control. "I'll handle everything. You just rest. Communicate only through notes." I closed my eyes, appearing frail, but my mind was laser-focused. My isolation gave her the perfect freedom to continue her work, believing she had complete control. The ceramic sentinel. While Clara was preparing my evening medication tray, I directed Leo's primary caregiver, Maria, who was completely loyal to me and privy to my plan, to the kitchen medicine cabinet. Maria, a whiz with small tech, quickly installed a discreet device. It was a small, charming ceramic bird that looked like a piece of decorative kitchen clutter. It sat perched on the top shelf, looking directly down at the medicine bottles. What Clara didn't see was that the bird contained a high-resolution, low-light nanny camera. It was positioned perfectly to record every action taken around my daily pillboxes. I had given Clara the illusion of a total medical victory. Now I waited for the camera to record the crime. The days following my dramatic collapse were a test of endurance. Confined to bed, I maintained the facade of a severely debilitated patient, communicating only via shaky, handwritten notes to Clara and to Leo's caregiver, Maria. This isolation was designed to give Clara the confidence she needed to be sloppy, the guardian's control. Clara now operated as the undisputed medical proxy and household manager. She controlled every aspect of my environment, from the thermostat to the medication schedule. She would sweep into my room, check my pulse, and lecture me about the critical necessity of signing the final guardianship papers as soon as my head cleared. I would simply nod weakly and write notes saying must sign after I rest. Need Maria to handle Leo for now. Maria, acting as the loyal, subservient housekeeper, was my only lifeline. We communicated in coded notes, slipped under my meal tray, updating me on the house activity, and most importantly, the camera status. Code from Maria. The sentinel is singing. The camera is recording. The first capture. The true moment of reckoning came on the third night. Clara had been meticulous during the day, ensuring my meals were prepared under her watchful eye. But the evening routine was different. Maria had established a clear pattern. She would leave the kitchen for her scheduled evening check on Leo, leaving Clara alone near the medicine cabinet for a crucial 5-minute window. That night, Maria gave me the update, footage secured, transferring now. I felt a surge of cold triumph beneath my blanket. Later, using a tiny secured device Maria had placed under my mattress, I accessed the encrypted feed. The footage was captured by the wide-angle lens of the ceramic bird looking down like an indifferent sentinel. Clara entered the frame looking relaxed and completely alone. She wasn't preparing my pills. She was scrutinizing the row of bottles. She picked up my anti-seizure medication, a drug critical for managing the residual effects of my past head trauma, and then my common daily multivitamin. She opened the multivitamin bottle, then carefully opened the anti-seizure capsule. Using a small, specialized medical instrument she pulled from her nurse's pouch, she scraped a tiny amount of the anti-seizure drug, known to cause severe fatigue and cognitive fog if incorrectly dosed, and deftly sprinkled it into the multivitamin bottle. She then replaced the cap and shook the bottle gently. Her movements were practiced, subtle, and utterly criminal. She was slowly poisoning me not by overdosing, but by contaminating my non-critical meds with a drug that would systematically suppress my cognitive function, making the misdiagnoses seem legitimate. The goal was clearly to make me appear permanently incompetent before the guardianship hearing. She then placed 2 pills on the bedside tray, the tainted multivitamin and the opened, now underdosed anti-seizure capsule, before walking back to my room. The clear intent. The video confirmed my worst fear. This was premeditated medical abuse designed to incapacitate me just long enough to seize control of Leo's trust. I now had the unimpeachable proof of tampering captured by the disguise she never noticed. I immediately wrote a shaky note to Maria: contact my attorney, Mr. Elias Vance. Use the secure line and the code phrase, "The bird has a full nest." Do not acknowledge my awareness. My next task was survival. I looked at the tray Clara had just delivered. I had to continue the collapse, but I couldn't ingest the tainted pills. I waited until Clara left the room. Then I painstakingly used the tip of a pin to pierce the contaminated multivitamin and empty its contents into a secure, sterile baggie Maria had left under my pillow. I replaced the pill with a clean, identical multivitamin from an untouched bottle. I did the same with the underdosed seizure medication, ensuring I received the correct dosage from my untouched supply. I would maintain the illusion of illness, but internally I was stabilizing. I had the evidence: the lawyer was on call, and the sentinel was still watching. My attorney, Elias Vance, no relation to my late husband, thankfully, was the only person outside of Maria who knew the full gravity of the situation. Maria had successfully reached him using the secure line and the code phrase, initiating the next phase of my countertrap. The legal briefing. Elias flew to Seattle immediately, but knowing Clara was constantly monitoring my condition, we couldn't meet in person. Instead, Elias secured a legal consultation room at a nearby hospital, the perfect cover story for a woman whose health was supposedly declining. Maria drove me to the hospital using a wheelchair to emphasize my critical condition. Clara was furious about the trip, demanding to attend as my medical proxy, but Maria simply stated firmly that my physician required an urgent, confidential legal consultation regarding the trust before any guardianship papers were signed. Clara had to let me go, as opposing legal advice would look suspicious. Once inside the consultation room, I dropped the mask. The fatigue was real from the stress, but the cognitive fog was gone, thanks to receiving my correct medication dosages. Elias, I said, handing him the tiny baggie containing the contaminated pills and the flash drive with the ceramic bird footage. Clara is not a cousin. She is an attempted murderer. She's tampering with my anti-seizure medication to render me permanently incompetent and seize Leo's trust fund. The evidence. Elias was stunned by the brazen criminality of the plot. He watched the footage from the ceramic bird, twice his jaw tightening, as he saw Clara meticulously scrape the medication into the multivitamin bottle. This is conclusive proof of aggravated assault and medical battery, Elias stated, his voice low and serious. The video combined with the contaminated pills, which we will send for immediate independent forensic toxicology analysis, will lead to her arrest. We can't arrest her yet, I countered. She needs to think she's winning. If we move now, she'll destroy the final piece of evidence, the signed guardianship document she has ready. My plan was precise. I need you to prepare two things immediately, Elias. First, a court order to freeze the assets of Leo's trust, accessible only by a court-appointed administrator, me untriggerable the moment she tries to submit the guardianship papers. Second, a legal declaration of competency from an independent neurologist, certifying that the sudden collapse was due to external factors, not my underlying health. The final bait. The moment I returned home, Clara pounced. Eleanor, that trip was reckless. Your color is terrible, she fumed, holding the clipboard with the guardianship papers. I need you to sign this immediately. The attorney insisted on it given your instability. I looked at the document. It was a formal petition to the court naming Clara as Leo's legal guardian and temporary custodian of his financial trust. Feigning extreme difficulty, I picked up the pen. I signed the document with a weak flourish, making sure my signature looked shaky and barely legible. It's done, I whispered, handing her the clipboard. Take it and file it. I need to sleep. Clara snatched the papers, her professional composure finally breaking into a wide, triumphant smile. I will, Eleanor. I will file it first thing in the morning. She had the bait. She believed her victory was secured. She didn't realize that the moment her name appeared on the court registry as the prospective guardian, Elias would trigger the asset freeze. I closed my eyes, the familiar scent of the potent drugs Clara was still trying to pump into my system, almost unbearable. But I knew the truth was sealed on a tiny memory card, and justice was now moving faster than her greed. Clara was vibrating with suppressed excitement. She spent the rest of the evening making phone calls in hushed tones, presumably to her own lawyer, finalizing the details of her imminent control over Leo's multi-million-dollar trust fund. I remained in bed, the signature on the guardianship papers acting as the perfect lure. The filing bright, and early the next morning, Clara left the house in a rush. Maria, my invaluable ally, gave me a silent thumbs up as Clara's car pulled out of the driveway. Clara was heading straight to the courthouse to file the signed guardianship petition. I immediately called Elias Vance on my secure burner phone. She's filed it, I confirmed. The clock is running. Understood, Eleanor, Elias replied. The moment the petition is logged in the court system, my preemptive order goes through. The bank will receive the official mandate within 30 minutes. The plan was predicated on speed and surprise. Clara believed her filing would immediately grant her temporary control, allowing her to start making decisions regarding the trust's liquidity, decisions that would no doubt benefit her personal finances. The trap snaps. Clara arrived at the courthouse, submitted the papers, and received her time-stamped receipt. She was officially on the court docket as the prospective medically approved guardian of Leo. Exactly 30 minutes later, she made her first triumphant call to the private bank managing Leo's trust fund. She presented her name and claimed the guardianship petition gave her the authority to restructure the trust's investments, a clear move to gain immediate access to liquid funds. The bank's response was not what she expected. We apologize, Ms. Vance, the bank manager stated professionally. We have received an emergency court order from Judge Reynolds. The entirety of the Leo Vance Trust is now under a temporary restraining order and asset freeze effective immediately. All transactions and investment decisions are suspended until the court rules on the legality of the guardianship petition and the medical evidence presented. Clara's world shattered. She was frozen out. The trust, the entire object of her treacherous scheme, was now untouchable. The return, Clara stormed back into the house late that afternoon. The veneer of her false concern had completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, visible rage. She found me exactly where she had left me in bed, feigning deep, fragile sleep. She didn't speak to me. She spoke to Maria, her voice dripping with thinly veiled accusation. Did you call anyone this morning, Maria? Did anyone visit Eleanor? Maria, maintaining her perfect role as the simple housekeeper, shook her head. No, Ms. Vance. Only the delivery man. Clara paced my bedroom floor. She knew she had been countered, but she didn't know how. She believed I was still mentally incapacitated. Her only conclusion was that Elias Vance, my lawyer, had anticipated her move and filed a contingency which was too complex for my frail mind to have coordinated. She stood over my bed, her eyes blazing with frustration. This is not over, Eleanor. The court will see that I am the only medical professional qualified to care for Leo. I will get access. The toxicology report. While Clara was reeling from the legal setback, Elias was securing the final piece of evidence. He called me via the secure line that evening. The toxicology report is back, Eleanor, Elias reported. The pills you collected, the ones she tampered with, tested positive for traces of anti-seizure medication at a level inconsistent with your prescription. It is definitive proof of medical malpractice and intent to harm. We move now, I stated, discarding the shaky persona. The asset freeze gives her nothing to lose. She might escalate the tampering. Agreed, Elias confirmed. I have notified the Seattle Police Department and the state prosecutor's office. They are preparing a warrant for her arrest based on the video evidence and the toxicology report. They will be moving on the house tomorrow morning. We need you and Leo ready for extraction. I looked at the ceramic bird sitting silently on the shelf, its work complete. Clara thought she had succeeded in burying me in my own sick room. Instead, she had simply confined me to the perfect vantage point from which to record her crime. The arrest was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Elias insisted on executing the arrest while I was safely out of the house, ensuring both my and Leo's protection. The extraction. Early. Tuesday morning, Maria, acting completely naturally, informed Clara that she was taking Leo for his scheduled therapeutic hydro session at a specialist center. Clara, obsessed with regaining control of the trust, barely registered their departure, simply nodding and continuing to pace my room while making frantic, hushed calls to her lawyer. Maria drove Leo and me directly to a secure location, a neutral office provided by Elias, where we would wait for the police operation to conclude. Once safely away, Elias contacted the Seattle Police Department. The warrant for aggravated assault, conspiracy, and medical battery was executed immediately. The arrest. The police swarmed my quiet suburban home. Clara, still focused on her legal maneuvering, was caught completely by surprise. The police entered my bedroom, where Clara was sorting through my medical charts, searching for something to bolster her false narrative of my incompetence. Clara Vance, you are under arrest, the officer stated, reading the charges. Clara was stunned. This is ridiculous. I am this woman's medical proxy. I am caring for her while she is severely ill. The officer simply moved toward the kitchen where the main evidence was located. We have reason to believe that the care you were providing included felony tampering with prescribed medication, Ms. Vance. Clara followed, yelling about my instability and the outrageous lies. When the officers pointed to the ceramic bird on the shelf above the medicine cabinet and informed her it was seized as a piece of forensic evidence, the realization hit her. Her entire plot. The subtle tampered pills. The staged collapse. The careful manipulation of my vulnerability had been witnessed and recorded by a piece of ceramic kitchen decor. Her face went pale, the bravado dissolving into raw panic. She knew the footage was irrefutable. The unmasking. Later that afternoon, Elias brought me back to my home. The police had secured the premises, and the ceramic bird, along with all my remaining medication, was now in police custody. I sat in my living room, the room where Clara had first presented her wicked proposal. I was no longer slouched or weak. I sat up straight, my back rigid, my cognitive clarity absolute. Clara's lawyer, having secured her immediate bail, arrived at the house demanding to speak to me, believing I was still the frail, confused patient who communicated only through notes. Mrs. Vance, my client insists on her innocence, the lawyer demanded, entering my living room. This is a gross miscarriage of justice brought on by your clearly diminished mental state. I stood up. I was dressed in a tailored suit, my hair neatly pinned back, my eyes clear and steady. The contrast between my current appearance and the bedridden patient he expected to see was shocking. My mental state is excellent, counselor, I stated, my voice strong and measured. My clarity has been fully restored since my medical proxy was removed. The lawyer stammered, completely nonplussed. But you were confined to bed. You communicated through notes. That was a calculated strategy, counselor, I explained, walking toward him. I realized my cousin was tampering with my medication. I feigned collapse and confined myself to the bedroom precisely to give her the freedom to commit the crime on video, knowing she would be too arrogant to check for surveillance. I pointed to the spot on the shelf where the ceramic bird had sat. The notes were designed to confirm her narrative of my decline, providing a perfect psychological environment for her to commit felony assault. She believed she had incapacitated me. Instead, she merely put me in the optimal position to record her crime. The lawyer, realizing he was confronting a composed, ruthlessly intelligent opponent, backed away, his protests dying on his lips. The act was over. The physical threat was contained. The legal defense was preemptively dismantled. I had used a lie to reveal a dangerous truth, and the evidence was sealed in police files. With Clara in custody and then released on high bail, the immediate threat was gone, but the investigation was just beginning. The final scientific piece of the puzzle, the toxicology report on the recovered pills and my blood work, was crucial to ensuring the state prosecutor could secure a conviction. The toxicology confirmation. Elias Vance, my attorney, called me with the official results. The toxicology report confirms everything, Eleanor, Elias stated, his tone professional, yet grim. The sterile baggie containing the pills you recovered showed traces of the anti-seizure drug lamotrigine in the multivitamin bottle well outside therapeutic levels for that specific formulation. Furthermore, your blood work from the day you collapsed showed depressed cognitive markers consistent with recent small, unscheduled doses of lamotrigine, confirming your symptoms were medically induced. The report provided definitive proof that Clara's actions weren't accidental or misguided medical advice. They were precise criminal acts of tampering intended to simulate a debilitating neurological condition. We have the video showing her doing it and the lab report showing the effect. I noted, feeling a cold clinical satisfaction. The case is sealed. Elias agreed. The state prosecutor, Ms. Rodriguez, is moving for a preliminary hearing next week. She considers this a strong case of aggravated assault due to the use of medication to cause severe bodily harm. Reclaiming the home. The hardest part of the immediate aftermath was restoring normalcy for Leo. While he had been unaware of the medical danger, the sudden change in his routine, the absence of Clara, and the sudden influx of police had been deeply unsettling for him. Leo, who relies heavily on routine and predictable environments, reacted with increased anxiety and self-stimulatory behaviors. Maria, my rock, helped me gently restore his routine. We deep cleaned the house, removing any trace of Clara's presence, including discarding the remaining medication and replacing the entire contents of the medicine cabinet. We need to be honest with him, Eleanor, in a way he can understand, Maria advised. Not about betrayal, but about safety. I took Maria's advice. I knelt down beside Leo, who was absorbed in stacking his wooden blocks. Leo, I said softly, holding his hands. Clara was not making the house safe for us. She was using bad medicine. I fixed it. Now the bad medicine is gone, and the bad feeling is gone. We are safe, and we are strong. His eyes flickered up to mine. He didn't speak, but his stacking resumed with a calmer, more deliberate rhythm. The return to our secure, untampered environment was the best antidote to the emotional trauma. The final severance. My final task was to formally and permanently eliminate any legal avenue Clara might have to approach me or Leo again. Elias successfully petitioned the court to immediately impose a permanent restraining order. This order was sweeping, forbidding Clara from making contact with me, Leo, or Maria, and prohibiting her from approaching our home or Leo's school. Furthermore, her nursing license was immediately flagged, pending the outcome of the criminal trial, effectively ending her career. Clara, driven by her monstrous greed, had sought to gain control of a fortune and a child. Instead, she lost her freedom, her reputation, and her entire professional future. I stood in my kitchen looking at the empty spot on the shelf where the ceramic bird had sat. It was no longer a decorative item. It was the symbol of my resilience. My own frailty, real and feigned, had forced Clara to act, and my planning, done in secret collaboration with Maria and Elias, had ensured her capture. The danger was over. My family was safe. I was finally ready to face the long, drawn-out trial, knowing that the camera had already delivered the verdict. The date for the preliminary hearing arrived. This was the first time I would see Clara since her arrest, and the first time the full weight of the ceramic bird's testimony, the video and the toxicology report, would be publicly presented in court. The preliminary hearing. I attended the hearing with Elias Vance. The courtroom was packed, drawn by the sensational nature of the charges. A family member, a medical professional arrested for drugging her cousin to steal custody of a special needs child and his trust fund. The state prosecutor, Ms. Rodriguez, was methodical. She presented the evidence. 1. The video. The courtroom watched in grim silence as the footage from the ceramic bird played, showing Clara meticulously tampering with my pills. 2. The toxicology. Ms. Rodriguez entered the lab report confirming the anti-seizure drug contamination in the multivitamin bottle. 3. The motive. Elias provided the financial documents showing the immediate value of Leo's trust fund, establishing the clear, immense motive for the medical battery. The case was a slam dunk. The judge, clearly appalled by the video evidence, immediately confirmed that there was overwhelming probable cause for the case to proceed to a full criminal trial. The defense narrative. Clara's defense attorney, a sharp, cynical man named Mr. Reynolds, was left with only one viable strategy: attacking my credibility and my sanity. Mr. Reynolds stood before the judge and delivered his opening salvo, ignoring the video entirely. Your Honor, the defense asserts that this case is based on the highly unreliable testimony of a client who has a documented history of neurological issues and is clearly suffering from persecutory delusions fueled by grief and stress, Reynolds argued. He then tried to twist my counter-strategy into proof of mental illness. We contend that Ms. Vance fabricated the entire collapse and orchestrated a complex, unnecessary scheme, including hiding surveillance and feigning incompetence, because she was experiencing a severe psychological break. The video in this context is not a confession, it is Miss Vance's cousin Clara attempting to correctly administer or adjust medication doses under immense stress, which the client then misinterpreted through a paranoid lens. He even attempted to suggest the ceramic bird was a manifestation of my delusion. The client claims a bird was watching her cousin. This level of elaborate deception is highly symptomatic of an unstable mind. My response. Elias stood up calmly, countering the narrative immediately. Your Honor, the defense claims my client is delusional, yet the toxicology report entered into evidence confirms the presence of lamotrigine in the plaintiff's multivitamin bottle. If my client is delusional, then the crime lab is also delusional. Elias then read a short prepared statement from me, written specifically to combat the character assassination. Ms. Vance was forced to feign illness to protect herself and her son from a medical professional who was actively poisoning her. If the defense wishes to argue that a person who installed a hidden camera to catch a thief collected toxicology samples and notified authorities is delusional, then they must be prepared to argue that a multi-million-dollar trust fund is an imaginary motive and that the video of tampering is a hallucination. My actions were those of a competent, determined mother and CEO fighting criminal assault with evidence. The statement effectively silenced Reynolds, who could not reconcile his delusion argument with the cold, hard physical evidence of the tampered pills and the asset freeze order. Bail revocation. Clara's situation worsened when Ms. Rodriguez successfully argued to the judge that Clara was an extreme flight risk. Your Honor, Ms. Rodriguez said the defendant has lost her nursing license, faces decades in prison, and has now been stripped of her entire financial motive. She has nothing left to keep her in this jurisdiction. Given the severity of the charges and the risk of further interference with the victim's health, we request immediate revocation of bail. The judge agreed, citing the overwhelming evidence of violent medical tampering. Clara was remanded into custody. I walked out of the courtroom breathing the fresh air deeply. Clara was behind bars, her career over, and her freedom gone. The price of her greed was absolute. I had won the first battle by letting her believe she was the victor. With Clara remanded into custody, the pressure lifted completely. The legal strategy now shifted from defense against attack to securing Leo's future permanently. My attorney Elias Vance moved swiftly to finalize the status of the guardianship and the trust fund. Finalizing the guardianship. The original goal of Clara's scheme, seizing control of Leo's financial future, was the final item to be fully resolved. Elias successfully petitioned the court to formally dismiss the fraudulent guardianship petition that Clara had filed using my signature. The court then officially affirmed me as the sole permanent guardian of Leo, both medically and financially. This decree was coupled with a strong court-ordered protective order that was permanent, ensuring Clara could never again legally approach me, Leo, or Maria. Elias ensured the protective order included a crucial clause: Clara was forbidden from benefiting directly or indirectly from any part of the Vance estate or Leo's trust fund, even years into the future. Auditing the trust. I spent the next several weeks meticulously auditing Leo's trust fund with Elias. We needed to ensure Clara hadn't managed to compromise any accounts before the asset freeze went into effect. The audit revealed that while Clara hadn't succeeded in making large transactions, she had made numerous inquiries and attempts to shift the trust's investments into high-risk, easily liquidated assets. Her intent was clear: move the money into her control and then cash out immediately. I worked with a financial manager to restructure the trust entirely, implementing a layered security protocol that mirrored the vigilance I now used in my personal life. We utilized multi-factor authentication, required dual signatures from me and Elias for large transfers, and instituted real-time fraud monitoring. The financial system was now as secure as my medicine cabinet. She thought she could exploit the complexity of a special needs trust, I told Elias. We've made it impenetrable. It is protected by the same level of paranoia she tried to use to destroy me. The loss of a relationship. The final painful step was dealing with the remains of my personal connection to Clara. Despite her attempts on my life, she was still technically family. Clara's lawyer contacted Elias, presenting a request. Clara wanted me to agree to use some of her seized assets, which were held pending the civil damages suit, to pay her mounting legal fees. Elias presented the request to me without prejudice. Eleanor, she is asking you to fund the legal defense against the felony charges of drugging you, Elias summarized. I gave a definitive answer. No, the court will order full restitution to cover my medical bills, my legal fees, and the cost of the trauma she inflicted on my household. Any remaining assets she has should go to that. She chose to commit a crime for financial gain. I will not fund her defense against the consequences of that choice. I signed the denial. It was the final formal severing of any pretense of family loyalty. My focus was entirely on Leo and the future free from the shadow of betrayal. The Sentinel's retirement. After the toxicology report was complete and the evidence was sealed for the criminal trial, the police released the ceramic bird back to me. I picked it up. It was light, cool ceramic, completely innocuous. The tiny camera lens was invisible to the casual observer. It wasn't just a piece of evidence. It was the silent witness to my recovery and my counterattack. I walked to the medicine cabinet, the very spot where it had sat patiently recording the nightly acts of malice. I didn't put it back on the shelf. The era of needing to monitor my home was over. Instead, I placed the ceramic bird on Leo's bedside table. It would no longer be a sentinel against a criminal. It would be a simple, silent reminder of the day his